Okay, I think everybody is online now, so we're going to proceed. So first off, I would like to welcome everybody to today's live webinar, which is on looping constructs. Okay, so we're going to be basically looking at the two different types of for loops that we have in C#, and we're also going to be looking at the two different types of while loops. Okay, now I'm aware there's some learners online today who have just come onto the course, and this may be a little bit over your head, but as I said to a student on the phone today, this is going to be recorded and it will be available for everybody at a later date, and basically so as a podcast. So even if you don't understand fully what we do here today, as you progress through Unit 1, you should be more comfortable with what we're discussing, and then you can come back and you can view this tutorial again, and hopefully it will help to help you gain a better understanding of how the different looping constructs work. Okay, so we'll commence now, and can I just say that if you do have any questions
we're having sound issues,
throughout, okay, we're having sound issues, so we'll just
better.
Is everybody happy? Everybody okay? Okay, so I think our sound issues are now sorted. So as I was just saying, we're going to be looking at the four different looping constructs that we have. And if at any stage you have a question, you can raise your virtual hand. You should see the virtual hand icon on your big blue button interface. So all you need to do is press that, and that will Terry will be at command the center, the big blue button there. He'll see that, and he can type in your question, and I'll do my best to answer it. In saying that as well, we do have a limited time frame for the webinar. So if it is a wee bit off topic, I might defer that question, but I will answer it via email during the week. Okay. So with that said, I'd like to welcome you all to today's podcast on looping constructs. Okay, so just to reiterate as well, we'll proceed now. We will, for the purpose of this tutorial, we will be using a mixture of English and code on the board. So we're just going to convey how the concept of the different looping constructs works. We won't get too hung up on the semantics of the actual code. Okay, so what are we going to do? Right. Well, basically, what we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to use the four different constructs to process an integer array. So we're going to start off with an integer with 5 numbers, and basically all we're going to be doing is printing the contents of an array to the console using the different loops. Okay, so we're going to start off looking at the two different types of for loops, and then we'll move on to the while loops. We'll finish up with that. Okay, so we'll start off there. We will go straight into the C# code. So we will start with our main method. Okay, and the first thing we want to do is we want to declare our array. Okay, so it's going to be an integer array. So we have int, square brackets, and now I'm going to call the array my array. Okay, and I'm going to initialize the array now with 5 integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So open my curly brace, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, now most of you will be familiar with arrays at this stage. If you're not, that's okay. As I say, you can come back to this again. We did do a podcast on arrays earlier. Unfortunately, it's not available, but we will be doing another one in the coming weeks to make up for that, because we had an issue with the actual video recording on the day. So anyway, this is our array now. So it's declared and it's in memory. And we all know that an array has an index. So just for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to put the index of the array over each element so that we can easily see what's happening when we go through the different loops. Okay? So we know that with arrays we always start at position index of 0. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So now we'll look at the first loop. This is the standard for loop, and this is the loop that you will probably use most of the time on this course, okay, when you're processing arrays. So our for loop construct starts off like this. We have a for, we open up a bracket there, and then we declare our integer. and we're going to use this int I, and this is basically going to allow us to reference the array, the index of the array, okay? So obviously when we want to print out the first item in the array, we have to know what the index, and the index is always going to be 0. So we want to initialize this variable to 0, okay? The next part of our for loop is the condition. The condition, what does that mean? Well, it basically means when do we want to exit the for loop, okay? So how many times do we want the code contained within these braces to execute? That's what this is going to dictate here, whatever number we put in. So we know we want to print 5 numbers to the screen, so we want it to be less than 5. So I, the condition, is 5, or I rather, has to be less than 5. And the last thing then is we're going to increment at the end of each execution of our loop. We want to increment that I variable. What does that mean? Increment. What does I++ mean? Well, I++ essentially is shorthand for, we'll just go over here on a side note, I++ is the same, I is equal to I plus 1. So essentially, each time you go through an iteration of the loop, we're going to increase I. It's going to start off at 1, the loop's going to execute, then it's going to be incremented, it will go to 1, then it will go to 2, 3 and 4, and we'll obviously exit at 4, because when I gets incremented to 5, what's going to happen? This condition will fail and we'll exit our loop, okay? So, the last thing that we need to do is to actually put a bit of code in here that's going to print to the console our elements of our array. So console dot writeLine, and inside here we want to access each index of our array. So we start off with the array name, which is my array, and within our square brackets we're not going to put 0, 1, 2 or 3 or 4. We're going to put, what are we going to put? We're using I, aren't we, to iterate through our array. Okay, so that's going to print our array for us, and then we can close off our main down here. Okay, so let's just go through the whole process of what exactly is happening each time the loop executes. So the program's going to run to here. We're going to get our array created in memory, and then we're going to come down here, and the first thing is going to jump in. I is going to be initialized to 0. Then we're going to do a check, okay? We're going to check does this condition evaluate to true? Is I less than 5? It's initialized to 0, so it is true, so therefore we will proceed with the execution of the loop, okay? So we're going to execute whatever is contained within our curly braces here, okay? So the first one, I is equal to 0, so we do console.writeLine, and we'll have our output over here. Okay, and this can be our DOS prompt. The first thing that we get output is my array. I is what? I is 0 on the first run. So we looked at what 0 is, so 1 will be printed to the console. Okay? Then we come to the end of our loop, and what happens then is this I++, this increment takes place. So I will be equal to I plus 1, so I is incremented by 1. And then we jump back up here, so I is now not 0, it's 1. So we say, is 1 less than 5? That evaluates to true. And now we execute this line of code again within our loop. So my array 1 is going to be printed to the console, and my array index 1 corresponds to 2, so 2 is going to be printed now. This process is going to keep going until this condition fails. So again we get to the end of our loop. I is incremented by 1, so now I goes to 2. Now we check the condition again. Is 2 less than 5? Yes, it is. So this will be executed, and we'll get 3 printed to the console. Okay? Down here again, I gets incremented. So now we're going from 3 to 4. Jump back in here. Is 4 less than 5? Yes, it is. Actually, I've skipped an iteration there, guys. We're actually only on 3 now. So I is actually equal to 3, and 4 is printed to the console, as I've said. we jump down here now again. I will get incremented to 4 this time. So we're at index 4 here. So 5 is printed finally. And then the last time I will get incremented from 4 to 5. We finally check our condition. Is 5 less than 5? And at this point, the condition evaluates to false, and we exit our loop. So we're going to be jumping down to here, and then we exit our program. So that's the basic execution of a for loop. Okay, so just a quick recap. We start off by initializing our variable I to 0. We then put in our condition when we want to exit the loop. Okay, so we have 5 elements to print. So we want to exit when it's equal to 5, because we know that the index is at 4 here. And then finally you have your incrementer here on the end. And we've gone through the execution each time. So at this point now, I'm just going to revert back to Terry and just ask, is there any questions? No questions?
Audio is patchy, might make another apology.
Okay guys, listen, apologies for the audio there. There may be a little bit of interference. It's obviously on our end, because the internet could be patchy. But as I say, don't worry too much about it, because we have the video recording, and you can always refer back to that at any time. Okay, so we'll have it up on Moodle in the next couple of days. Okay, so now that we've done the for loop, what we're going to do, we're going to look at the for each loop. Okay, so this is a simpler loop. Basically, we don't have to worry about initializing a variable or worry about a condition to exit the loop with the for each loop. So let's just have a quick look at that. I'm only going to change this. I'm going to leave this and edit it as we go. Okay, so the for each loop is a little bit different, and we'll just have a look now. So it's for each, and then we're going to be opening up our bracket. And the way you say it is for each, and then I'm going to use this. I'm declaring an integer variable here, and what this is going to do is this is going to store each value in our array automatically as the loop iterates. Okay, so we don't need to worry about incrementing I or anything like that. So int, I'm going to say number, and then you use keyword in, and then you use the array that you want to reference. Okay, so let's just look at that, because it actually makes sense when you read it in English. For each number in my array. Okay, so this is a lot easier probably to understand for beginners, and it's perfect for if you're only doing something like this, printing out a number to the console. Okay, but if you do want to do any sort of heavy processing, such as maybe swapping numbers within an array, then you're going to have to use the traditional for loop, because we don't have access to the actual index when we use the for each loop. But for simple processing like this, the for each loop is perfect, and as I say, it's very easy to read. For each number in my array, we want to do a console.writeLine, and we just need to change this a little bit, because as I say, we don't access our array using the index when we're using a for each loop. What's going to happen is, each time the loop iterates, the number will be taken from the array and placed and stored in this here, and we can print it out to the screen directly. Okay, so the exact same thing is going to happen. We're going to get the exact same output, but you can see there, it is easier to read. Okay, because you're not worried about checking conditions, and you're not worried about incrementing your index, because it's all done for you. The for each loop takes care of it all for you. So let's just run through it. We come in here. The first number in the array is going to be stored in here. Then we jump in and we print it to the screen. So we get the output of 1. Okay. Then it goes up again, and the second number, so number 2, our index 1, will be stored in number, and we print it to the screen, and the output will be 2. And we keep going like that. Each time, the number is stored. Each time the loop iterates, the number will be stored in this number here, and we can print each number to the screen. And when it gets to the end, it's smart enough to know that we're at the end of the array, and we exit. Okay. So one thing I didn't mention with the other for loop, and I meant to mention it, was that the condition was very important. Okay. So if we had set the condition wrong there, we could have had an array out of bounds error in the previous example. So if we had set it less than 6, then we would have tried to access a position outside the array and we would have got an error, okay? But with this construct here, that's not going to happen because it's actually smart enough to take care of that itself, okay? And as I said, there's plenty of times we can use this, but if you do want to do any sort of swapping with your arrays, any real heavy processing, then this is not suitable, because when you are swapping things within the array, you're going to need the index is going to be easier to use the other loop. Okay, so any questions at that point now, before we move on to the while loops?
No.
No questions? Okay, well that's great. As I said, there may be a few students online, this might be a little bit over their heads, but you can always come back to the video later and actually watch it again. Okay, so we'll just move on to the while loop now, and we'll see how that works. And you'll see that all these loops are the manner in which they execute is pretty similar, okay? They all do the same thing. So now we want to, but most of the time when we're using an array, we will use a for loop to do the processing, not a while loop. But you can use a while loop, and we will use a while loop right now. Okay, so the while loop will start off like this. We're going to need some sort of condition within our while loop, just as we did in our for loop. It's going to be the exact same condition. We have 5 elements. We'll have to declare an integer outside our loop, like we did before. Like we had the integer declared within the actual for loop construct. It's different with the while loop, so we're going to declare our I variable here. So we have int I is equal to 0, and then we start with our while loop construct, okay? So you can see there, the keyword while, we open up our bracket, and within our bracket we put our condition, okay? And it's going to be the same as the condition that we had in the initial for loop. While I is less than 5, okay? Very important that we have initialize I to 0, okay? Because we know that what would happen if we initialize I to 1 here? What's going to happen? We're going to miss printing out our first element in our array. The index always starts at 0, so we must initialize I to 0 if we want to access the first element. Okay, so now we'll open up our bracket and we'll close it down here. We're going to have the exact same thing that we had in all of our loops. In the middle, we're going to have a console.write line. Again, we're just writing to the console. And we're going to have the same thing again, my array, and we are using the variable I to access the index and to print out the contents of our array each time. So we're going to have I within our square brackets there. So that's basically it, and we'll close off our main method then. That's our while loop construct. Now, what are we missing here that we had